On Tuesday, January 16, a meteor occurred in the state of Michigan, causing a 2.0 magnitude earthquake. Aliens. Only possible explanation.
It was Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell who made the ceremonial barefooted walk to the master control terminal of the federal government to turn the dimmer switch from barely doing anything down to shut down. Peter Dinklage, Peter Dinklage, Peter Dinklage, Peter Dinklage. Our boy Peter told Variety magazine it's the perfect time to end Game of Thrones.
The Me Too movement became the center of conversation when an anonymous 23-year-old woman accused Aziz Ansari of unwanted sexual aggression. This, unsurprisingly, prompted a defensive response from the internet, which, unsurprisingly, prompted a defensive response of its own, which, unsurprisingly, prompted a defense of its own, which prompted a dumpster fire. Ever feel like you're drowning in news story after news story? Well, welcome to the party. Come on in. The water's tepid and frankly pretty uncomfortable. Hi internets, I'm Ross. This is the Talk Better Project. This is an intermission, sort of a special episode where I just want to take a moment and point out how crazy fast our news stories seem to come and go. Not only does it take no time at all for a news story to hit, but it seems like there's not even time to draw breath, much less conclusions, before the next story comes out. So why am I saying this? Well, because the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is still a really big deal, and yet reporting about it has dropped off a cliff since it got signed. Use Google, go back and compare the week before it got signed to last week. There's a huge difference in volume and type and quality of reporting being done on it. So much information comes at us so fast every day that I think we start to make a certain assumption. We know that if something's important, it'll get talked about. But then we make a reverse in our heads and say, so if it's getting talked about, it must be important. But is it? Imagine every day I give you a bucket to fill with water. Water that represents news, basically. And I tell you, but I only want you to fill this with good stuff. And then I back away 10 feet and turn a fire hose on you. Who wouldn't put the bucket over their face and run away? But that's dangerous. Well, I mean, that's a metaphor. Filling a bucket with a fire hose is inherently dangerous. Don't do that. But what I mean with the metaphor is, I'm talking about the way we get information. The fire hose is information, how we get information, and your bucket, you probably get it. Here's my point. Don't let our buck-wild news cycle dictate to you what's important. Because the state of Michigan did have a 2.0 earthquake caused by a meteor. Game of Thrones is on its final season. The federal government is 18 days away from another shutdown. And we are in the middle of a very important social conversation about sex, gender, and consent. It's up to you to choose what receives your attention and your time. And I hope I've managed to convince you, even just a little bit, that the tax policy, tax reform, and the economy are not only important, they're complicated. And I think we should be having conversations about those hard topics even when they're not in the news. As for me, you'll soon be seeing an episode about why each political party was trying to convince certain people to listen a certain way about the tax plan. Until then, thanks. See you around. Like I said, this is a special intermission episode of the Talk Better Project. The project is made with the support of lovely people like these over at patreon.com. To the master control terminal is the Talk Better Project. Talk Better Project. Those are some last cards, I'll tell you what. Peter Dinklage, Peter Dinklage, Peter Dinklage, Peter Dinklage. Quite enough for one silly joke.